Thank you, Tom. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Tom said, my name is Cai Berg. I'm the CEO of Diem Labs. Just a bit of background before we get started. Diem Labs was founded in 2016 to bridge the gap between dietary supplements and medicine. Our goal is to bring clinically validated functional dietary ingredients directly to physicians and consumers. All Diem Labs products are produced in cooperation with the originators and experts behind the ingredients they contain. Umbrellux is no exception, with Diem Labs holding the exclusive license for DAO for North America. Diem Labs was founded with a commitment to scientific development and public outreach. We focus our efforts on education to expand awareness regarding specialized dietary needs. So with that brief background, let's get started with today's presentation, Coming Clean about DAO supplements. My presentation today will cover the basics of DAO and address some of the questions we have received over the past year. What is DAO? We'll start with that. We'll discuss why DAO supplementation is so important for those who need it. And we'll talk about some of the limitations. DAO can be incredibly helpful for those who are DAO deficient, but it isn't the answer to everything histamine related. Finally, we'll talk about the composition of Umbrellux, and we'll open it up for questions at the end. So without further ado, let's jump in. So what is DAO? It stands for deamine oxidase. The image to the right here is a 3D rendering of the DAO molecule. In older medical literature, DAO is sometimes referred to as histaminase. That's because it's an enzyme that breaks down and deactivates histamine in humans and animals. Histamine is a biogenic amine, a class of biological substances that include serotonin, dopamine, and epinephrine. DAO functions primarily in the digestive tract, specifically the small intestine. It is also found highly concentrated in kidneys and the placenta. For our purposes, we are focused on DAO activity in the digestive tract, where it works to neutralize histamine that we take in through our diet, as well as histamine that is released or quote-unquote liberated in response to foods, medicines, stress, or other influences. It is important to know its concentration in the kidneys because this is where supplemental DAO comes from. It's derived from porcine or pig kidneys, but more on that subject will come later in the presentation. So why is DAO supplementation important for people? Experts suggest that between 1% and 5% of the population is chronically DAO deficient or histamine intolerant. We use these terms somewhat interchangeable because those who are highly sensitive to histamine often are deficient in DAO, and there are factors blocking DAO activity in the digestive system. We all consume histamine in our diets every day. It's found in high amounts in aged and fermented foods like cured meats, sausages, cheese, wine and beer and spirits, and even chocolate. Some fruits and vegetables like strawberries, tomatoes, avocados are also high in histamine. Further, the introduction and proliferation of processed foods has increased our consumption of dietary histamine because the production often involves a fermentation process. Shellfish can be another culprit. Other foods can liberate or cause the release of histamine in the gut. Foods like eggs, seeds and nuts, and leafy greens are considered histamine liberators. Some foods and many medicines also block the activity of DAO, creating a deficiency even in those with normally healthy levels of the enzyme. Both green and black tea block DAO. Common prescription and OTC drugs that block DAO activity include many antidepressants, some common pain relievers like aspirin and ibuprofen, and ironically, even some antihistamines. For those with low DAO levels or low activity, DAO supplementation works fast, without side effects, and helps the body neutralize histamine in the gut. And yes, There are unfortunately some limitations to DAO supplementation. DAO should never be looked at as an antihistamine agent, which are drugs that act on the various histamine receptors throughout the body. DAO does not affect histamine receptors, and supplemental DAO does not pass into the bloodstream to have a systemic effect. For 4 to 6 hours after oral supplementation, it is active only in the digestive tract, specifically within the small intestine, and what is not used for the metabolism of histamine is simply passed out of the body. For best results, DAO supplements need to be taken prior to consuming what we call trigger foods, foods and beverages that contain or liberate histamine. So the best way to use DAO is to take it in the morning or to take it at least 15 to 30 minutes prior to meals. Wine, in particular red wine, is one of the biggest trigger foods for histamine intolerance. So if you're going to have wine with dinner, for instance, you'll want to take your DAO before you start the meal. Everybody's needs are different, obviously, just as everybody's symptoms are different. But what we find that 1 to 2 capsules is effective for most people. However, this could mean 1 to 2 capsules per day or 1 to 2 capsules before each meal. One of our advisors, registered dietitian Wendy Bussey, who is focused on mast cell activation, recommends what she calls systemic experimentation to find what level works for you. And finally, supplemental DAO is not suitable for vegetarians. It is produced from an extract of porcine kidney. We tested many sources, animal and plant origin, before settling on porcine, mainly for commercial production reasons. Interestingly, the highest concentration of DAO was found in hyena kidney. Makes sense, right? Because all their food is highly fermented and therefore extremely rich in histamine. Right now, there is no vegetarian source of supplemental DAO. Dr. Janice Janisha, another DM advisor, has written about the use of pea shoots and sprouts as a source for DAO. And many people are experimenting with growing and eating their own sprouts for this purpose. Unfortunately, however, the yield of DAO from sprouts is too low for this to be an economically or commercially viable source for supplements. As part of our commitment to research and discovery, we continue to engage with scientists and industry to seek new technologies and solutions. So it's possible a vegetarian-friendly DAO could develop. We're just not there yet. And finally, I want to address the question of why there are so many inactive ingredients or excipients in the Umbrellux DAO product. We are aware of the concerns many food-sensitive people have to everything inside the capsule, and we are working to address these concerns. First, please know that the excipients in Umbrellux are present in very small amounts, are safe, and approved for their use, and they are there for good reason. Close to 70% of the excipients are made up from various types of cellulose. The patented formulation in Umbrellux was developed for 2 reasons. 1, to protect the enzymatic activity while in the bottle, and 2, to allow the DAO to pass through the harsh environment of the stomach to make sure it is still fully active when released in the small intestine. In order to do this, various approved dietary excipients are used to stabilize, protect, and deliver the DAO. This is also the reason for the pellets you see inside the capsule. Each pellet envelopes the active enzyme inside a protective barrier. Now, I do understand that as much as I can explain the reasons for the excipients, their presence may still cause concern for some of you who are really food sensitive. I want to assure everyone that we are committed to researching and developing new technologies that will allow us to reduce and remove excipients while maintaining the effectiveness and activity of the product. That's not a simple challenge, and thus is taking significant investment in time and resources, but we are dedicated to working towards a solution to address this concern. With that, I want to thank you all for tuning into this webinar today, and I'm happy to take your questions.